the process, the process of becoming a U.S. trained and U.S. licensed dentist. Tell us what's been the hardest part for you in your experience in going through this process. What's been the hardest part for you?
I think there were a couple of them. And to start with it, number one is understanding that the academic system in the United States not just require good scores or passing an exam. There's a certain kind of criteria, which includes your SOP, preparing for your resume, getting good high definition letter of recommendations, and then presenting yourself in a professional way. And just to add with it, because I might be really good at something which is recognized in other part of the world, but you have to present it in a way that's audible to the American ears that they can relate to. And I think those are some of the things. Along with that, second would be financial aspect, because you're spending about 10, 15,000 even before entering into the school. And you just migrated, you're figuring out your visa and everything. So I think those were the two biggest stress that you have to figure out how you're going to manage, and you have to have some resources stored up for you before you jump into this game.
Becoming a dentist is a dream for many all over the world, not just in the US, but also in the countries outside of the US. Stay tuned as we talk to an internationally trained dentist that not only got through the CAAPID process, the application process, but also just finished his US training and is now becoming a dentist in the US. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Dr. Darwin, a new dentist coach, with another episode of Ask Dr. Darwin on the New Dentist Podcast Show, where we talk about getting into dental school, getting into residency, and then life as a new dentist. Guys, thank you for continuing to entrust us with sharing information about becoming a dentist and becoming a specialist and just becoming a new dentist and what that means. Be sure that you continue to share, comment, thumbs up, but also support this channel. It's from your support that we're able to expand not only within the US, but also throughout the whole entire globe, all right? So there's ways that you can do that. We got merch, we've got memberships down below that you can take part of. Also, this episode of Ask Dr. Darwin is being brought to you by Get Into Dental School. Get Into Dental School, but it's really also part of Dr. Darwin On Demand. Dr. Darwin On Demand, it's a community of like-minded dentists, new dentists, residents, all in pursuit of making sure that their dreams come true. Check out more details down below. Dr. Darwin On Demand, right down below, right here, okay? So guys, today is a special treat, especially for all of the international dentists. You have a colleague here today that's going to sharing his game, the game on how to get into dental school in the US as an internationally trained dentist, and also how to succeed in preparing your CAAPID application, which is so important. And it's the number one way that you get into dental school here in the US. Today, we're going to be joined and talking to Dr. DrAdriel. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, sir. Well, thank you for having me over, Dr. Darwin. It's a pleasure, and I would say an honor as well, that I'm finally able to talk to you. I've been seeing your videos. You have a really good YouTube channels, and I've been looking at how many people you helped out with specializations. And that's quite because if you try to contact somebody in oral surgery or an endodontist and say, hey, can you tell me how your interview was? They're going to be so much busy, but they get to see your channel, see the information that you're sharing. I think that's quite a blessing in its own way.
Thank you. And it is a blessing to be able to at least spend some time and really network, connect with, support and uplift others in this game called Get Into Dental School, Get Into Residency, but just the game of our profession to be able to get the training that we need. So really excited to have you on the episode today. And you know what? Let's just jump in because we have a lot to cover and a lot of things that we want to share with everyone. The first thing is, why dentistry in the U.S.? You know, you have had some very great success in your country, and like others, but there's always something. It always seems like there's, you know, a main reason for many people, and some of those reasons may be different, of course, for everyone. But why did you decide that coming to the U.S. and getting trained as a dentist in the U.S. was important to you?
So I'm going to give you an answer. It might be a different perspective, especially for people who already who grew up in US. As an outsider, and I grew up in Pakistan, and you need to understand it's not just about becoming a dentist and becoming good at it, but you always look towards a society where there's certain values which provide you better, I would say, shelter, refuge in a way. It's hard to explain, but it's not just when I was in Pakistan and I used to see education in US. I grew up with American education because my dad used to teach in a Presbyterian university, but there were certain other values that I used to look up to. And I think they were coming from United States because a lot of people go to United Kingdom and these countries, but I think dentistry was one thing, but living in a country, and I know it has its own problem, but still from an outsider perspective, I think people who are listening to this, they need to understand it's a blessing to be in this land and able to pursue something that you love. Trust me on this. I've seen so many competent people, but because the systems are so crappy, they would never let you pursue what you want to do. And I think that was one of the things that kind of pushed me towards United States. That's the best way I could put it in words, I would say.
Yeah. And I think that's similar for many people, just the opportunity of having the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And having an opportunity in a country or a part of the world where certain things are valued, certain things are modernized. The information is leading edge. So I think all of those kind of play into why the US for many.
Dr. Darwin, along with that, when you're younger and you want to compete somewhere, you look up to the places which have the biggest competition in the world. You're like, if I'm going to go, let's go big at that time. Right. And especially when you're like in your 25, 26, it's kind of like the Rocky mindset. And see, Rocky is a universal movie. Like people even are crazy about it in Pakistan. So having that effect and thinking like, if I'm going to compete, I'm going to go to the biggest ring of them all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's what you did as far as your application, and that's what you've accomplished. And we'll talk about that a little bit, talk more about the success and how you did that. But also, it's important to know, as we're starting off talking about the process, is that, you know, people need to know that it's not easy. It's a lot of competition. A lot of people are submitting applications, submitting CAAPID applications, but they're also, in addition to the actual application itself, there's certain components that have to be completed and have to be completed efficiently and very well, all of which can make this process a challenge, right? It can make it very difficult. Tell us a little bit more about what's been the hardest part for you during this process.
So for me personally, it kind of varies from which country you're migrating, but from the country I was migrating, in order to pursue dentistry, I need to have financial backing to pay $300,000-$400,000. So in my case, I had to go through the process of making sure I become a permanent residence first and then think about applying to school, which means spending 4 years just waiting that I can reach that certain status in the United States. But on the other hand, my colleagues who are from India, India is one of the only country in the world right now, which is the government is giving student loans for people who want to pursue dentistry in the United States or any education, which is a big thing, like getting two, three, $400,000 from your government from these countries. It's a big bet, but I think they have this privilege. For the other people, I think most of the people I've seen from Middle Eastern communities, since the wartime, I know a lot of Iraqis came in, and when they get their legal status of either a refugee or a permanent resident, then it's much more easier for them to pursue, because I think financially and otherwise you have the proper status on which you could easily apply.
Hey, this is Dr. Darwin. Are you looking for some mentorship, some accountability, some help with getting all of this application and getting into dental school and getting into residency and then just your life as a new dentist? Look, I'm having monthly, twice a month, live coaching sessions and office hours so we can talk about all of that. I don't want you to struggle with the application process. I don't want you to struggle with getting ready for interviews. I don't want you to struggle about what list of schools and programs to apply to. We talk about all of that in our group, our monthly group called Dr. Darwin On Demand. Dr. Darwin On Demand. Check it out down below here. And then also, if you're interested and you want to get that help so you don't have to struggle anymore, so that you can get some mentorship, some accountability, and some help, hit this link right here. Hit that link right there so we can get you signed up and enrolled today. Today. Your future starts today. And I'm here to help you. This is Dr. Darwin. And join my members-only community called Dr. Darwin On Demand. Look forward to seeing you soon, okay? Now back to this episode. Enjoy. Yeah, and I think you hit on 2 points that are part of the process that can be very difficult for people. The finances, right? The money, because in many cases, coming to the U.S. to prepare your application costs a lot of money and time, and then the other part about your opportunities as you are looking to become a permanent resident or even achieving some type of residency status, whether it's as a citizen or even as a student as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well as we move forward. Next part is the application, because the CAAPID application has many different parts, many different and moving parts. And moving parts that seem to just be a checklist item, but also those items on the checklist have many checklists themselves. It can be very complicated and challenging for people. So walk us through your process of preparing your application. And eventually we'll get to certain schools that you've selected or we're investigating. We'll talk about interviews. We'll talk about any other preparations related to helping you decide on which school to select. But let's talk right now about this application, the CAAPID applicant.
Yep.
Yeah.
So dear CAAPID, and I'm gonna try to, because I hope the viewers who are watching me are coming from diverse background, and I'm gonna try to help them out with this. So if you're applying, you might be back home in India right now or Pakistan, and trying to see how you can apply. First of all, you need to realize in order to apply to any dentist school, rather than you sending them documents. Over time, what they thought is make a centralized portal. So all the dental schools, like 99% of the dental school in the United States who take foreign trained dentists, decided to create a portal, which the portal's name is CAAPID. So it's a third party which collects all your information, your data, collects your document, make sure they are legit, nothing is plagiarized, and then it it sends to the university that you want to send it to. Why did the universities do it? Because it creates less work for them and it channelizes the process. So starting off with the CAAPID, I think number one thing that they see on CAAPID is your personal information. So you have to tell your name, your legal status, your citizenship, if you have a social security or not. Then in addition to that, then they walk through which country you studied, what was your score, and there's something called ECE evaluation. You can Google it, and maybe Dr. Darwin can put a link underneath the video. That's where you need to get the valuation. That's like the first step. You get your EC, you give your INBD, and then you go towards CAAPID application. And in that, you put your EC evaluation, and they give you like how much GPA you got, like 3.2, 3.7, whatever it is, you fill that in. Then you move forward, put in your personal statement, and the personal statement or statement of purpose, whatever you want to call, is your story. And the story consists of how you got, why did you choose or opted for dentistry? How was your experience back home to become a dentist? Then talk about why you wanted to pursue dentistry in the United States and your experience. And my personal recommendation to people is show a diverse side, because a lot of us who are migrating don't know the value of, like, I'm not putting it on people, at least in my case, it took me some time to understand the importance of volunteer work in the United States. It's a very, very strong pillar, and they want to see, as an immigrant, whether you're living in Canada, in United States, have you done any volunteer work? And my suggestion is go and do it with a recognized organization. Just don't go to your uncle's place and start helping him out and think that's volunteer work. Make sure you go to a legit organization like Red Cross or something recognized and work with them. And the more diverse your work is, like work with underprivileged community, work with LGBT community, work with something that is outside your zone, because that will make you different from your peers. Because you won't imagine a Pakistani guy coming in and being friends with LGBT community, right? But in your application, if you talk about how you've been working with these different people, you will be, I would say that will make you special right away. So fine, and I'm not saying everybody should do one thing, but find your comfort zone in your area, wherever you can do volunteer work, and go and do it. So that's something that you fill in. Then you put in kind of like your resume, your experience, the work hours that you did, your previous education. They want your evaluations to be sent, like your INBD score, your TOEFL score, which is an English exam. So you send all of these documents to CAAPID. Then they ask you, tell us about 3 to 5 people who are going to be your evaluator. Evaluators, referee, whatever you want to call, are people who are going to write a letter of recommendation saying, this is a good person, I believe he's going to be a good dentist, and I recommend him. And my suggestion is, for international dentists, try to get one letter, at least one letter from US. Why? Maybe I'm really good back home, I'm doing a lot of work, everybody says I'm the champ, but the problem is they want to hear somebody backing you up from home, from United States. So I would want one of my professor or somebody, a volunteer like a dentist, somebody saying in the United States that I've seen this guy working, I met him, and he's a good person to be in a dentist school. So that's the next thing. And then comes the tricky part, where you can go and see 30 schools who are offering advanced training program. And CAAPID has a directory. If you Google it, And maybe that's something you can find a link, and Dr. Darwin, if he can put it in, but there's a directory you can go and see different schools. And one of the things I want to share with foreign trained dentists, we need to understand that US is very big. Like it's very big. Like Pakistan or England is smaller than Texas. And it's quite funny for us to realize that. So when we see East Coast has its own school, West Coast has its own school, and then we can see the number of seats they have. And every school fee kind of varies from the other. The living cost varies. The length of the course, the minimum is 24 months, like Colorado where I went, and it can go up to 32 months as well. So these are some of the things that you see in the directory. And before I finish this, I would say my suggestion to most candidates is at least apply to 10 to 15 schools, because the bigger your net is, the higher chance you catch a fish. I think that's something Dr. Darwin would tell even the local dental students, candidates as well, like apply to multiple schools.
Yeah, that's important, especially multiple schools or programs that share the alignment that you have for what you envision as a dentist, whether it be location, whether it be community service, whether it be programs and schools that have residency programs or a specific type of specialty residency program that maybe you're pursuing. All of those are reasons to not just look at one or two schools, right? But it can still be different for everyone. But you're absolutely right. Not necessarily, but you're absolutely right, especially with as an international dentist coming to the US, there's less options than there are for US citizens who are applying to dental school, right? There's 67, about to be 68 and 69 and 90 dental schools that US students apply to. However, like you said, there's usually only about 30 schools that have an international dentist program or have an advanced standing dental program for internationally or foreign trained dentists. So that list of US dental schools at 70 goes from 70 to now goes down to 30. So that's why you want to be very strategic and not only investigating those schools, but making sure you have enough of those schools on your list for your application, which is a great segue about what you did and how you approached it. So share a little bit more about the number of schools that you applied to and why, not just to give you leverage, because we know it's more than just having leverage and having, casting a wide net. I mean, that is a strategic plan, but that can also be a costly plan, because these applications and the supplemental applications and the fees for the applications are not, they're not free. So share with us about, what was your approach?
So one of the things, I applied to 15 schools at that time, and so there were 30 schools. I was like, okay, Drill, where are you going to apply and what's your reason? So I kind of saw the 30 schools, and I was living in Ohio, Midwest. So first of all, I used to live in Maryland, as I told you, like DC area, in Philadelphia. So that was kind of home to me as well. So these were the main areas I was looking for. But then the second criteria was the number of seats where I'm going to be applying. And the second is the time. I think for us, like you can vouch for this, Dr. Darwin, that time is one of the biggest assets that we have. Rest is all recovered. It can be recovered, but time is something is gone. So I was looking at a program which starts the earliest, where I can get in and get out at the fastest, so I can save some time. So that was a third thing. And one of the things, this is a very special nugget for, like, consider this a bonus point. If you really want to make or increase your chances better, I would highly suggest is that whichever schools you're going to apply, look for open house, campus tours, or create an opportunity. Even if you have to do whatever you have to do, like become a patient up there, but go and visit that school. Go physically, because just imagine if Dr. Darwin is in the committee of the school admission committee and he see 800 paper in front of him, it's really hard to pick out. But if we saw Adriel and met him like 3 months ago on a campus tour, and I was able to present myself in a decent, respectful manner, he might say, oh yeah, I met this guy. So maybe it's worth calling him on an interview. Because again, if he's going to be calling 300 people, he's making a blind bet. It's for school, that's a lot of liability spent using their faculty's time. So hey, I'm repeating this: if you're a candidate, find ways to go and visit that campus or that tour, or tour that campus, or at least meet the administrative staff, even if the faculty is busy. Because again, this is, Dr. Darwin will agree with me that the administrative staff who's sitting, they are the gatekeeper. They are the one forwarding your paper. If it kept lying in the drawer, and if it keeps lying there, well, you're not getting anywhere. So make sure you connect with them. So hopefully, if all things go right, they will kind of help you out in one way or another. So creating that connection, and we are all humans, we work through motions. And when you're in a big herd mentality, you want to get out of that herd. And the way to do it, in my case, was like, go there and meet people and present yourself in the best possible manner that you can.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. A great bonus tip about schools and being able to visit and or connect with people associated with the school prior to applying. Prior to applying. Again, visit the schools prior to applying. If there's an open house, if there's some type of even a CE course, right? CE course at the school, or maybe there's an internship or externship for internationally trained dentists. There are some other programs, and we're just going to give you this game right now, this play, but there are some programs that have, in schools that have what is called a preceptorship. A preceptorship. It's not free, but it's like basically it's like an externship where you can be in front of instructors and decision makers at the school to observe how the school educates and teaches students, and great opportunity for you to help with your decision making about what schools you see yourself at and what schools are looking for candidates like yourself. So,
and just to add, Dr. Darwin, a lot of candidates, I've told them this thing, and they will say, oh, I have to fly all the way to California or Jersey. But imagine if Dr. Darwin is hiring a dentist for his clinic, and I'm a candidate who flies in, spend money, take a hotel, and then go next morning and meet him. He's going to take me serious, because now he knows that this person had the urge to invest his resources and walk up to my door and talk to me. And I think that does give you an edge if all things go right. So you do want to make the best out of it. And Dr. Darwin, here's another tip that a lot of foreign trained dentists can use. I knew some of them utilize this. A lot of us, when we come here, we start working as a dental assistant. In Florida, we can get a hygiene license. If we just go and give the exam, we can get a hygiene license. But a lot of people do dental assisting. I recommend them, why not go and become a dental assistant or an employee for a dental school? Rather than working for a private practice, try working in the school. Then you're going to be an employee of the importance of HIPAA, the importance of at least the culture of an academic institute. You can mention on how faculty. So that gives you an edge, and you're making money, you're working, but you're also getting an experience of working in an academic institute.
great point, Doc. Become a dental assistant or an employee somehow, some way, even if you volunteer your time at the dental school. We want you to get paid though, because you're going to need some money for your applications. But great idea. And guys, I mean, you guys are getting some very valuable information about how to play this game and getting into dental school to become a U.S. trained dentist. Right now, down in the comments, I mean, just that tip alone is very valuable. So hit that like button. Also, put in the comments what you have liked so far about what you've heard. What do you like most about what you've heard so far? Put that in the comments down below. So another comment is related to how to comment and how to talk and how to prepare yourself for interviews, right? Because at some point, you're going to get invites for interviews, because that's the next step. After you put your application together, you put together all of these important documents. You've done some tests, you've done your TOEFL, you've done your letters of recommendation, you have done your personal statement of purpose, you volunteered, you've done some networking. Now everything's ready for your application. You submit it, and then you wait, and hopefully it's not too long, because the next step is the interviews. So share with us a little bit about the interview process, because it can have two parts. And I say two parts because some programs, some advanced standing programs from some international dental programs in the US have interviews, and they have what we call bench tests. And a bench test is just basically a clinical interview. Yes, sir. Right? It's like a clinical interview. So if you can share, I know you mentioned 15 schools. I know not all those schools had a bench test, but they did have some level of other types of interview, which is the one-on-one, face-to-face, or virtual interview. Tell us a little bit about like what that interview process is like, some questions that maybe people should be prepared for, or anything that might have been unusual as part of that interview day.
Yep. And I know you've been putting a lot of content about interviews. I put on my YouTube channel regarding interviews. So here's a fun fact I'll tell you from my experience working with these candidates. There are two kind of people who will reach out. One who will call you like 2 days before the interview and say, prepare me. I have this big interview. I don't have time. I'm dying to get in, help me out. And then there's a second type who will say, well, these preparations don't matter. Like these things don't matter at all. I'm good enough to get in anywhere. And I think both are not a good approach to it.
Not a good approach. Not a good approach.
And it's your opportunity. You want to take it any way you want to. But I personally think, and Dr. Darwin is going to agree with me, that when somebody reach out to him regarding YouTube, regarding his social media, his business, or dentistry in itself, you only get 3 to 5 seconds to make an impact psychologically at that person. And you want to use your first 3 seconds very, very careful. And my recommendation is opportunities come to a prepared mind. It doesn't just float around to people who are sitting idle. So what I'm trying to say is, when you're starting this application, you need to understand that your communication is going to be very important. And since I got a seasoned dentist sitting right in front of me, he can tell you how much it matters when it comes to patient management with your staff. So for candidates who think they're going to get into a school and they will get an invite for the interview beforehand, like whether it's giving your TOEFL exam, because TOEFL exams are becoming very difficult for a lot of candidates too, but you need to intentionally understand the importance of communication. And interview, what does interview mean? Interview means that a panel of people sat down, looked at your resume, your CAAPID, everything. Maybe somebody else wrote down everything for you and they saw it and they're like, oh, I like this. Let's call this person and put a face to this paperwork now. So what they saw, they liked the paper. They now want to see a human next to that paper and kind of see the coherence whether this person is the same person who wrote this down, because they aren't dumb. And the thing is, when you're not prepared beforehand, it's not that, because Dr. Darwin, just imagine he's taking my interview for only 20 minutes or 30 minutes. He's not going to know everything about me. And
No,
this
it's
is what
not enough time. You're right. It's
yes.
not enough time.
And what I tell people is that interview is an act of 30 minutes, and you have to present the best of yourself, because there are certain gray zones that you can't explain in 30 minutes. And you want to be very cautious not to touch them. Or if you say, especially somebody who's coming from a different country, like up there, a specialist can perform general dentistry in the evening. No, if I say this is an interview and an American dentist won't be able to understand, he's going to keep thinking maybe this person was doing malpractice, or what the hell, was he even a specialist in the first place? So you want to be very, and this is something that we teach. That's something that we focus upon, that you need to understand the dynamics of the US society and present yourself in a way that's audible and understandable in the 20 minutes that you're given. Because if you walk around gray zones, there's a high chance this is a competitive process, and they're like, oh, there's some question marks, I'm not sure. Like, I'm just giving you an example, Dr. Darwin. Somebody told me that during their interview at UOP, University of Pacific, they said, well, if you don't get accepted, what will you do? That person said, I might become a hygienist. They rejected him. And later when he emailed them, why didn't I get accepted? They said, well, because you always wanted to become a hygienist. Now, his flip-flopping of word, or his intentions were not clear enough, wasted 1 year of his time. He got accepted the next year, but that's sad. And that's what I tell people, that you want your words to be well articulated.
Yes.
And you need to think what they are thinking. Like
yes, words matter. Those words matter, and how you articulate them and how they appear to register to others.
And coming to the bench exam, which you were mentioning. So most schools, so I was amongst the lucky, unlucky, whatever you want to call, who were applying right when COVID hit in. And everything went in chaos. Like, it was a sense of panic. These schools, everything closed down. So at that time, they started virtual bench exams. And for people who want to understand what is a bench exam, a bench exam is an exam based off on ADEX criteria. What is ADEX? That's the licensing exam which dentists in US perform or challenges in order to get their license. You can go on Google, CCDCA, ADEX, and so they take that exam as a criteria and make you do those crown preps, class 2s, wax up in a lab within a given time, and you have to prepare for them and perform them. And you have to give your interview.
Doc, do you think that, given the fact that not all schools require a bench test, but there may be many that do, that are on a candidate's list of schools that they're applying to, what do you think is the best thing for them to do to prepare for the bench test? Because we already know they have to prepare for the interview, and the only way to know how to prepare is to get some help. I mean, that's probably the best way. You can't just always just be a friend or a family member. You need some professional help. So specifically for that. So we know about the face-to-face, the communication interview, but for the clinical interview, which is the bench test, what do you recommend people do?
So, and that's a very, very good question. Very good question, because somebody like me, I was trained much more on the surgical side of dentistry, and I never had loops when I was preparing class 1s or 2. And in US, you get failed to pass over 1 millimeter of occlusal reduction. That's a very deep insight that you need to have. And I would say, don't take bench exams lightly, and you should go and take preparation courses. Again, I'm not getting paid for this endorsement, but Dr. Stevenson Dental Solution in California, there's Duggan Institute, Buffalo University gives these kind of preparation. I think Pittsburgh do it too. You can check online. So some institution have these bench exam preparation, and they are expensive. You need to spend, but I think better you do it, because I was trying to go to Stevenson Dental Solution during COVID, and I had it canceled twice because that was 2020. And I felt my dental school life would have been much more easier if I had gone and taken that exam. I did got into 4 schools, fine enough, but having those skill set will help you in the dental school as well, because you're jumping into D3 right away and they expect you to work as a D3.
Yeah, your hands have got to be ready. And there is no, well, I got good muscle memory and I know how to do it. Yeah, I haven't done it in a year or two, but yeah, I learned it and I still can do it. Okay, well, if you want to risk that chance and having to start this whole cycle all over again, go ahead, go at it. But if you don't, and you're looking to get in this cycle and be successful this cycle, and you're ready to go and start this cycle, then you have to continue to make that investment in yourself, right?
And
That's
you
key.
can vouch for this, Dr. Darwin, that you performing dentistry in a human mouth, oral cavity, and then doing it on a typodont plastic teeth is totally different. You might have been really good with all of that in human practice that you were doing in your clinic, but when you're cutting those crown preps on those typodont, it's a mathematical exam that you just have to perform because they check you through measurements.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's
getting
tough.
used to it is very important.
Yeah, it's tough having to now go back to the foundational when lots of times those clinical scenarios are such that you have to extend the isthmus of your prep or the line angle of your prep just to remove decay or fracture, all those different things that are not necessarily always seen in the typodont or the teeth in the typodont. Share with us a little bit more about the interviews, the actual interview day. I know you applied to 15 schools. How many schools did you have interviews at?
I got invite from 6 schools, and I
Okay.
got out of those 6, I went for an interview at 5 of them. And
Gotcha.
since COVID, what they started doing is making them on Zoom.
Yes.
Loma Linda was one of the school which was still asking people to come in person, but now most schools are still in a hybrid mode. Like Colorado still has been taking interviews online because there's still COVID, and obviously it's convenient for everybody to be on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I gave 5 of them and I got rejected at Indiana, and out of the rest of the 4, I got acceptances.
So Colorado,
UCLA,
UCLA,
USC,
USC, California, West Coast. Okay.
NYU.
NYU in New York.
Yep. These were the 4 I got accepted. Indiana, I didn't got accepted. And UOP, I didn't give an interview because it was 5 days. And I already had that 4 acceptance. I was like, I'm not taking 5 days off.
5 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time, man.
Yep. And you have to take days off. You have
also had to have somewhere to live for 5 days.
Yep. And if you have to travel up there, you need a hotel for those 5 days, and you still don't know if you're getting in or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So 6 invitations, 5 interviews. Out of those 5, you got 4 acceptances. So were there any questions during the interview that were abnormal, or were they typical interview questions that most people would encounter?
Indiana got a little bit off. Like rest of them were really much fun because I was kind of mentally prepared, but I think UCLA had a lot of clinical questions during the interview. Like they were asking for rule, restorative, and all that stuff. But Indiana, they were asking about COVID, and I had a beard at that time. And the doctor was asking me, there were 2 people, they were asking, well, do you go and do work in a clinic or shadow? I said, yes. and they said, how do you manage the COVID protocols? And I kept giving answer, and the other professor was like, no, he's asking you have a beard, how do you manage it? Like, how do you put that 95? And I realized now it's not going to be, because schools have a very specific protocol they follow, and they are very picky. So that was a bit, but uh, I had the mindset, well, God is going to give it to me or not give it to me. I'm going to go and make sure they remember Adriel William, and I don't care about, if I get in, I get in. If I don't, I don't. It's fine. Like, I'm
Right.
gonna make the best out of these 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So have
And
fun.
that's all, that's all you can do. You can prepare and then pray, but you also got to still have to perform, right?
And
The
I
three
think,
P's: prepare, pray, and perform
yep,
at the interview.
yep. And I think you can't, one of the, from my personal experience with the candidates that I've worked with, one of the biggest killer is stress. Because, and I usually be upfront about it. Most of the candidates who are applying are female. And I personally suggest them that you need to be better at your stress management, even though men have to be too. But because if you act stressed out, you're going to sound desperate. Nobody wants to keep a desperate, stressed out individual as a dental student, because dental school is going to be a hell of a
Stressful.
ride.
It's going to be stressful in itself.
Yes, sir. So,
Well,
so
that's usually that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that's usually one of the questions that people ask, right? How do you handle stress?
that's actually quite true. All 4 or 5 interviews had that question.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've been on some panels for dental school.
Here's a fun question. Let me tell you. I had a friend who, she got accepted to a couple of schools. I was working with her for preparation. And this was one of the most odd question I've heard. This was at UOP, University of Pacific. And they asked her, she was giving a really good interview. And the examiner asked her, okay, that's good. But how about this? How many basketballs can you fit in the room that you're sitting in? Well, I think when you're doing a really good job and they see you're very comfortable, then they want to push you off and see how you man. Because my suggestion is, they they are recruiting you as a student,
right.
and they don't, as a, my dad used to teach, and he used to say, I don't like two kind of students. One who know nothing and don't want to learn, and the other ones are who know everything and don't want to learn.
Right.
So the
Right.
reason they are throwing this question is to see what's your approach, how you're going to say, okay, that's something I don't know, and I'm
Yeah.
willing to learn.
Yeah. They're also looking to see how you think, right? How you think and how you come up with, quote unquote, maybe solving a problem. But that's another great point. And I think it's something that, as an internationally trained and forward trained dentist, that you have to consider, because yes, you are a dentist in your country. You've been through dental school 5 years in most cases, and there could be the thought that you coming to the US, you know everything, right? Or that could be the apparency that some folks here in the US like, oh, well, he thinks she knows everything, or he knows everything because they've been a dentist in their other country. So you're right. That's a great question to kind of test many different ways. Number
And
one, to see how you're thinking, but number two, to see your level of humility and whether or not you're going to be teachable and coachable as a dentist from another country.
and I'll give you the answer to this question at the end of the video, so the viewers can continue. By the end of the question, I just told him about UOP, how they ask him how many basketballs can you fit in the room. Think about your answers, and by the end of the video, I'll try to give you the best answers I came up with it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, you had those 6 invitations, 5 interviews, and you heard early on from Indiana that you weren't selected for the cycle, but you also heard from the 4 other schools that yes, we want you, Doc. We want you to come to our school. So now you've got another thing that you've got to do, right? If you had just gotten into one program, it's easy. I'm gone. That's the one. But you got into 4 other programs. So share with us a little bit more about how you determined which school to go to and how you decided. How did you decide?
So in my case, it was again, as I mentioned, and this is my recommendation to all the people, like, especially if you're a young person in their 20s, right now, life might seem different, but time is the biggest asset. Like time, you can get money, you can do whatever you want to, but if once your time is gone, it's really hard to get it back. Well, you can't really get it back. So in my case, I got acceptance at Colorado first because its cycle starts earlier than the rest of them. So once I got into Colorado, then UCLA, NYU and all those other schools, NYU was 28 months. And I lived in Philadelphia, DC. I was like, NYU is a great school. A lot of people outside in the world, in India, Pakistan, were like, oh, NYU, it's a big name, go for it. And I was like, I'm in my 30s. I've already went like I'm 32 right now. And out of 32 years of age, I've been in school for 30 years. That's too much schooling. So I was like, do I really need these tags and spend more money and time? So the point is, I want my license. I want to be good in my hands-on skill, and I'll figure out the rest. So in my scenario, USC would have been a school that I would have gone if I wasn't in Colorado. USC has a really good program, really good patient pool, but it was starting off later than Colorado. So if I was in USC, I would be graduating in May. So I thought about what's starting first and ending first. And with Colorado, the living cost is way less than California. The You also need to see security problems, because I have a friend in USC and his car got stolen. And just imagine, you're a dentist student, you have all these things going on, and he used to tell me like he used to he's a funny guy from Syria. He would say like Kabul would be more safer than California. Right now we see these chopper chases happening in the school, and you need to understand that security issues are real. Like outside UPenn, Temple, like in Philly, these you have to be watchful if you're in Baltimore or
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's straight survival in Philly.
Yes, sir.
Students every day are and people in the community are literally fighting for their lives every day. So yes, cost of living, but also where that city is, where the school is, and making sure you're safe so that you
Yes.
can go to class.
And then the stress element, because I know I lived in DC area, the traffic, the amount of energy is consumed in, because I am a person, if I'm in a stressful room, I catch that stress. And dental school is already going to be a hellhole. Then you're in New York City surviving. If I'm 23 and I'm single, fine, New York's the place to be at. But I'm been through, like, I'm done with that phase. And I was like, let's go to a place where I can get some breath of air and stay calm. Even though dental school in itself, anywhere you go is going to be stressful. And here was the other thing, Doc, and you can correct this, but I feel the culture of the city town flows into the school. Like if you're going to UIC, Chicago is a rough place to live in. Like if your faculty is driving through traffic 2 hours in the morning, don't expect him to be very nice early morning. And I just feel like Coloradans tend to be, this might be my bias, but as compared to places I've lived, Coloradans tend to be nicer. Like even the offices, when you call for your driving license, because you need your license, you need to call the electricity utility bill and all that. Overall, the culture is nice. The patient are comparatively nicer. And when I was talking to some specialists, they said we would always like to practice in the South or Midwest because of the legal aspect. People tend to be more litigious when they are in course. I know in undergrad it doesn't really matter, but you as somebody who's practicing in Jersey, you know everybody got a lawyer's card in their pocket and they are looking for a dentist to sue. So
Absolutely. All day long, every day, even on Sunday.
yeah,
Even on Sunday.
so those were some of the elements that, but one thing I didn't knew at that time, two things that I learned later on. Some schools now have started to put in pass and fail rather than grading system, GPAs. UCLA is one of them. I think that's a better way to keep your stress low because all you have to do is pass. While in my school, if you want to get a good GPA, you now need to be a gunner. And I've never been a gunner and I don't want to compete with gunners. It's not something I don't like, but that's something I later on found out. And the second thing was if you want to apply for a residency, some schools have better chance, and you know this better than me, that they have a better chances of getting accepted in the match. Now, Colorado is mostly a GP school. They have ortho residency and perio, but USC, on the other hand, has really good match chances. So, and I know a lot of foreign trained dentists, depending on their age and visa, there are very few who pursue residencies. And it's not like you can't if you graduate from Colorado, like there are a lot of people who got accepted, but there are certain schools who are more recognized in those specialties because they had previous resident coming in from there.
So I heard about five things that led you down your pathway to decide. And I heard one school a multitude of times. So please share with us what school you selected and which school you recently just graduated from.
Well, I went to Colorado and I graduated from Colorado. And for me, it's one of the best schools. The good part about advanced standing students is our timeline is not working in the same manner as the DS student, conventional students. So we aren't competing them for patients. For example, I graduate in December, they graduate in May. What happens is that coming out in the market in December is actually much more fun because I can look for jobs and not compete with the other like thousands of students who are graduating. So that's actually a plus thing. And for example, if you're applying for your license to California or some other state during March or May, they have a lot of paperwork at that time. So if you're graduating in December, you're off the grid, like not many dentists are available. So it's actually a good position to be at.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well, congratulations not only on sharing, or more or less, congratulations on getting in and then getting through. Because I tell people all the time, the easy part, I know it sounds strange, but the easy part is getting in. Even for a dentist who is already a dentist who's now training in the US to become a US dentist, right? The easy part is getting in. The hard part is getting through because now you have to relearn all the things that you've learned already, good and bad things, in a new environment. And you're again putting your career on hold for another 2 years or 28 months or 31 months, depending on the program. So it is important to say congratulations because you did it and you did it again.
It's one of the things, Dr. Darwin, and I want the viewers to understand. Like I was 22 when I lost my dad in a road traffic accident. We had to leave the house. We were living in Pakistan. The car got stolen. Like there were tons of things that happened to me. Then migration, living in Philly, living in few of the roughest neighborhood in Philly, and working like doing all sort of different things that I could to survive. But going through dentist school, like I thought, like you're a grown-up guy, you could manage stress. What the hell? We'll see. We'll figure. But I actually, and I'm saying this on record, like there was a phase when I was going through depression, like literally, and as a grown-up guy to recognize that, and I knew it. And the only way out was like, just wake up tomorrow and go through the day. That's it. And it was stressful, like especially when you've seen other things in your life and you just have a hinge of like, you're somebody who want to think out of the box all the time. I think it's school, then school becomes much more difficult because you keep looking at things from different. You did
Yeah.
engineering, right? And then you went to a dentist school. So
Yeah.
your engineering brain keeps working in.
Yeah. Constantly calculating and thinking all the time, nonstop, right?
That's it.
Nonstop. Um, One of the things I wanted to hear and I wanted people to understand also was, you picked Colorado, and I know you mentioned one of the things that helped you decide, or that you used to decide as to what program you were going to go to, was the cost of living, but also associated with that is the cost of the school, right? Tuition. And for some people, some candidates, they get selected, put down a deposit, and sometimes have to forfeit that deposit because they can't come up with the tuition, or there's challenges with the tuition. Share with us how you navigated that, because to get in, like I said, is one thing you got, and then you've got to hold your deposit, and then you've got to pay, right? And there's not as many opportunities for foreign trained or internationally trained dentists to get loans in the U.S. banks and institutions as there are for those U.S. citizens. So share a little bit about the tuition for Colorado, and what was your plan for payment?
So this is something I want to, and this is a very sad reality. I knew a couple of people who got accepted coming from foreign land. They were able to get loan for 1 year, and in the second year they thought they're going to get a co-signee. Like if you don't have, so if once you become a permanent resident, so here's the thing, if you have a status of a refugee asylee, or if you're a permanent resident, or you're a citizen, you can apply for FAFSA, like the federal loan from the United States. Otherwise, you have to go towards private loan. Some of the
Right.
people can apply to Discovery or something like that. I was on a permanent residency, so I was able to get FAFSA. But I know people who got through the first year, and on the second year, their loan didn't got approved. They couldn't find a co-signee, because here's the other thing. If you can find a citizen who can co-sign for your loan, you can get it loan from the bank. But they weren't able to, and they had to quit school. And that's, I wouldn't, like, if I was in that state, that's a killer, because you already spent like
Killer.
150, and then you can't come up, and the, yeah,
And you can't get
that's
that money back. You cannot get the money back. That's it.
and the stigma of not completing this big dream. And God bless those people who were able to recover out of it and find some way out.
And I want to mention that can be a question at your interview.
Yes.
Program directors / admissions directors for these our U.S. international programs, they have to fill these positions. They have to know that you have the capability of paying. Sorry to say it, but it's, when it's not about the money, it is about the money, because those positions, 30, 60 at BU, 30 at Colorado, those positions is revenue for the school. That's how the school is able to continue to function year in and year out. So programs in schools are very particular and want to be assured that if they accept you, that you're going to be able to pay the tuition, because they don't want people to start and then can't get the rest of their tuition together. So that's very important as a candidate. Another bonus tip, very important as a candidate, that you are able to understand the mindset of the schools, because you will have to address that, because you will potentially have a question at the interview.
In my suggestion, I think schools are scared of two things. One is that you can't pay off the financial liability required to go through the school. And second is if you're not emotionally stable enough to manage all the stress. Because I've known people who quit school because maybe they were going through motherhood at that time, or they had psychological issues. And trust me on this, even if you don't have issues, you will develop them during schools. So those are the two things. And I suggest people be very careful when you're writing your personal statement during your interviews, not to, because a lot of immigrants, this is something they need to understand. When you're applying to doctorate program, master's program, you do research, you get funding from the state. And then if you act like somebody from underprivileged background who doesn't have finances, they will say, fine, we will help you out. But when you're applying to dentistry, and I made a whole video on this, it's a one big business. And it works on high, like you're going to be earning a lot of money, but you have to pay a lot of money to become a part of that fraternity. And you can't say that, oh, please let me in because I'm like, just for the sake of mercy. There are no scholarship for advanced standing students, not that I am aware of. So you can't play that card. And I would have candidates reaching out to me and saying, oh, this person is charging, or this program is charging. Well, welcome to the land of welcome to the realm of dentistry. You're going to be charging people too. We all go through this. You buy loops, you pay thousands of dollars for them. You buy dental insurances, malpractice, you pay for all of that. And it's just how the big industry is working. And one thing that you were mentioning about, so Colorado right now, just to give people an insight, schools fees varies. For example, Columbia right now is charging $500,000, 500,000 in New York for you to become advanced standing DDS.
So that's about 28. What's the program? About 28 months?
I think 24 to 28 months.
So 2 years, 500,000. That's about $250 a year. Now that includes tuition, expenses, living expenses, having to live in the city or Jersey.
And
so
this is like sharing, like you're living as a student with sharing in New York. And UOP is an expensive school. You end up more than, like, I think conventional student end up around 600-700, but advanced standing also is like 4 or 5. Colorado is a hot favorite in the advanced standing community because they have 40 seats and their fee is like, people, I don't want to guess anyone's, but approximately if you live and behave well, you can come out with a loan of 270, like when I was graduating. And obviously
total.
Yep, with living.
So that's about 130, 140 a year, including tuition and living expenses, having a place to live, all of that.
This is like you're living in a good place. And I'm talking about like living in like you're not living like you're living in New York.
Yeah, that's well, that's important for people to know. And it's really important for people to have that information before and as part of their application process, because that that number of 15 schools that you're recommending, 10 to 15 schools, could change drastically just based on knowing what you have to invest in yourself to get through and get the education via the tuition. So that's important.
And Dr. Darwin, let me tell you something fun. I get these texts from people who will say, I got accepted to Pittsburgh or UNC, Chapel Hill. Which school should I go to? And these people are like 25, 26. And I ask them, what's the compare the durations and compare the fee. They will say it's about, one school is 4 months or 5 months longer and 100,000 more. I'm like, is there even a question to ask now? Like, if you see more than $30,000-40,000 of different, don't even think about going there. Go for the cheaper one. Go where you can save time and start practicing, unless you want to pursue residency or something like that, or you have some geographical reasons you want to stay in that land. But don't even think, like, compare when everything is comparatively same. Otherwise, I know people who go to UPenn and they spend like 500,000 right now. Like I had people in Colorado who also got in UPenn but wouldn't go because they weren't willing to spend all this money.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got the whole safety and security thing that we talked about as well. So all those things are very important for candidates to consider, not only when applying, but also when accepting and making that decision about where to go. The money issue will not go away, folks.
It's gonna
And
get
you have
interest on it.
to know where you stand in the word called investment. It's called investment, and it starts with an I for a reason. I is in I gotta pay, I gotta invest, and I gotta make it happen. Right. So you have to be knowledgeable. Those watching and listening, you've got to be knowledgeable about how the tuition and how you're going to pay will influence your decision.
And I have a question for you, Dr. Darwin. If you were hiring an associate in your clinic who's an advanced standing person like us, like me, and one is graduate, like and this is I would ask, like, if one person is from UPenn, one is from Colorado, and one is from any random school, does for you, does it even matter if they are coming from an Ivy League when you're hiring an associate for the first time?
Well, the thing that matters is that they've completed the program.
Okay,
The
all
second,
of them.
the second thing that matters is that the program is accredited. The third thing that matters is, knowing some information about each of those programs will help as well. So even employers have to do some due diligence about the programs. Yes, they're all accredited. Yes, they all have standards that they have to uphold. But there may be some preferences that employers have related to the candidates that have graduated that they just may want for their practices or for their clinics or for their environment. So I think that's the only thing that will really matter, is whether or not that candidate is a good fit for them, not necessarily based on what school they went to, but also just kind of based on the culture of the practice, the office, the business, and whether or not they've heard great things or good things or not so good things about the programs that international dentists are coming out of. So I think that's important, or it's a characteristic that some people will look at as well. So we have talked a lot about decisions, where you went, what those factors have, how certain factors have influenced your decisions and your success. People want to also know, like you said, people reach out to you, reach out to me for tips and strategies, and they have questions. If you had, knowing what you know now, and you going through this process as a candidate, and then also going through this process as a student again, but now as a US trained dentist, knowing what you know now, give us like 3 or 4 tips that you would want to share with your international colleagues that are going through this process right now. Right now, many are waiting to get an interview, many are waiting to get an acceptance, and many are just starting the process right now. What are some tips? What are 4 tips you want to share with them?
The foremost one, which I'm hearing a lot from a lot of these candidates who are starting their process, is TOEFL. So a lot of these dentists have really good clinical skills. They've done a lot of volunteer work, everything, but they never took the importance of this English exam very seriously. So what happened? They give their INBD, they give their other exams, and they are preparing to start with CAAPID, and then they give TOEFL, and then they don't get good score. And INBD is pass and fail. All the exams are pass and fail, but TOEFL has a number. And the higher you score, the better your application will look like. It's like a cherry on top of a cake. So my recommendation to these candidates who are applying right now, giving INBD, is know that TOEFL is a stressful exam, and somebody's loss is your win. Why I'm saying this is because a lot of candidates find it difficult to get 105, 100. And if you can go and smash that exam and get 115,
Yep.
your application is going up right away.
Yep.
The other problem is people who know how to speak and write English, they think we are so good, we don't need to prepare. But TOEFL is not actually an English exam. It's actually more of a strategic exam where you plan your timing, you plan your templates in your brain. Like if you know English, there's a high chance you will get bad score because you're overconfident. It's not an English exam. It's more of an exam of strategy. So that would be my number one recommendation. Score higher in TOEFL, and that's the one punch that can break shatter the whole glass. So score higher in that. That will help you a lot. Second thing I would say that could help. Now I've seen, so I did masters in health administration before applying, but when I was in the school, I had about 5-6 people who have done masters from US. But now schools are getting more and more competitive, and now like 50% of them have done masters. It's not that you absolutely have to do it, but I'm telling you, it's becoming more and more of a norm. How can
It's a
you outreach it?
commonplace, right?
Yep. You can take ADAT exam. You can take some courses at community college. You can do something to compensate. But what I'm trying to say is, fortunately, unfortunately, it's just becoming more and more competitive. So push yourself more. You will get in, but you just have to perform more now.
Yeah. Yeah. So TOEFL, got to do it. Well,
Score higher.
definitely have to do it, but it's not
Score higher.
the fact that you have to do it. You got to score high, and
Because
high
people
is
don't spend enough
100 and
time.
higher. Yeah, 100 is the bottom floor.
Usually, I've known people who got in with, here's the other thing. When it comes to TOEFL, there are some countries like India, Pakistan was a British colony, and that's one of the reason I got a British high school degree and I can speak English in a certain way. But there are some countries which were never colonized by the British, so they are not English speaking countries, like a lot of South American. Like I had friends from Venezuela, from Cuba. They don't speak English. They did their dentistry in Spanish, and now they were learning everything in English.
Right.
Middle Eastern community, most of them don't have, they were never colonized. So for them, uh, TOEFL is difficult. Say what I saw, that they don't compare these ethnic groups or these people coming from these countries from somebody who's coming from India or Pakistan, because obviously their standard of English would be different. But still, if you're a Venezuelan, you're a Cuban, and if you score like 100 and rest of the folks are on 93, your application is going up. Your chances
Yes.
are getting higher.
Yeah, that TOEFL is important, everyone. And keep in mind, don't try to wing it. Just go ahead and invest. Remember, I got to make the difference. So that's why the I is an investment. Go ahead and make the difference and prepare. There's many courses and programs out there that can help you achieve that important part of your application, because that score will dictate the number of interviews and invitations you get for interviews, as well as some other things. And then the second thing you mentioned was how most applicants now, or many applicants, more than 50%. And again, that's just a guesstimate. That's just based off of, people that you have talked to over the years. More than 50% of them have some level of master's degree, right? Advanced.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
learning.
50, but it's like the water
It's
is going
increasing.
higher.
Yeah.
Yep, and here's another trend that's going on right now. Canada is offering a lot of immigration. So I know a lot of Indian community are migrating to Canada,
Right.
and schools are preferring Indian Canadians or Pakistani Canadians because they know these people are already in Canada. They have been assimilated, or they have certain level of proficiency in English or work there. It's much more easier to give them admission as compared to calling somebody or inviting somebody from Pakistan who wouldn't even get a visa at this point. So I'm not saying you can't get in. If you're in India, you can totally get in. But if you're in Canada, it will increase your chances if you prepare in the correct manner.
Yeah, and I would say also related to that, over the recent years in dental education, there's been some collaborative efforts and strategic plans for the Canadian dental schools, residencies, working with U.S. dental schools and residencies, both with students or future residents, but also with CODA accreditation and also with licensure. There are things that happen in Canada that the U.S. has continued to look at in its effort to modernize the licensure process here in the U.S., getting away from live patients and more on what's called an OSCE or mannequin related types of exams, some of which have been very successful in Canada. So some great tips, man. And I will tell you, there's more of these tips and strategies because you and I are working on a project together and collaborating on a couple of projects that are coming up, one of which is related to this topic and how to become a U.S. trained dentist, the guidebook and course for international dentists or foreign trained dentists. I know that's one project that we're working on and we'll be releasing very soon. What other projects are you working on?
So one thing I loved the most doing was preparing. You can see I love to talk, so that's my weak point, but I like to prepare people for interviews. But I've been working on helping candidates with overall, like, first of all, understanding what you're getting into, like what this thing is, and preparing your application. My biggest, like, I shouldn't say, but I'm still gonna say, I had people who are like really big surgeons and they would text me and like be angry at me that, oh, you're charging money for this. And I'm like, maybe I would think the same if I was sitting in Pakistan. But once you go through all of this process and you understand this, and you as a dentist, you know what your time worth is, right? Like if you're in your clinic right now, you're producing something, your license is worth, like, on an average, Dr. Darwin, and I would like you to give people an answer, especially foreign trained dentists, like, at how much does a dentist hour cost?
It's really based on the
Like on
value,
an
but
average.
well, there is no dollar amount.
Okay. But
You can't calculate a dollar amount because there's so many different variables. It
but
varies. It can vary. It can be based on time, but that's arbitrary. It could be based on education.
the reason I'm saying this is
Yeah,
because somebody like experienced like you, who was an engineer, then a dentist, and then did clinical work, and now you're doing this thing. If you're spending your 1 hour and you're charging something, it's caused because you have white hairs and you spent a lot of time
yeah,
in knowing
yeah.
what you know. And
That's true.
plus, and your skill level, you can actually utilize this time for a certain, like, you can earn a really good money when you're in the clinic with this the same hour.
Yeah.
So I tell people, one of the things I've realized is it's really hard to explain people, and especially when you graduate and when you go through school, your identity changes, your worldview changes, because you realize this is one big business. With candidates on interviews, that's something I love to do courses, help them with SOPs, with LORs, and even some clinical, like, preparation if somebody needs help with virtual bench exam, or once in a while, whenever somebody needs an advice, I'll try to help them, because a lot of people are looking for motivations, and that's something I had somebody message me that I'm preparing for INBD and I did like a mock exam and this is the 6th time I'm failing. What should I do? It's like in next 10 days. I was like, can you delay it? That person
It's in
said,
the next 10 days.
yeah, that person said, I can't take more days off my work because I
Well,
have to work.
that means they're probably about 30 days late by telling you they got 10 more days.
Yep. And I said, well, in your scenario, just prepare the best you can do and just give the exam, because you can't take days off. So you can't delay the exam because you have to work, pay your rent. The best thing that you can do is perform the best you can and just leave it on destiny. That's
Yeah.
what. And sometimes people, when I'm going through stress, that's something I want to hear from you, Dr. Darwin, because you're on the other side of the road. So I'm like, maybe he knows, and people know the answer, but sometimes they will text you just to hear that. And I like to be positive as much as I can, but sometimes it can be stressful, man. You know this better than me.
It wouldn't be called stress or life if it didn't have some stress. But stress is really just, again, it's just the inability to control something. Once you figure out how to control, or at least small pieces of it, and you multiply that over a period of time, your stress starts to vanish. And so that's something to consider. What's the best way if people have more questions, they want to get in contact with you? What's the best way?
So I'll maybe hopefully in the link in your description link, you can put in my my contact, my email address, my YouTube channel. They can reach out to me. Maybe I put my WhatsApp.
So what's your email address?
It's purposedrivendentistry@gmail.com. They can message me on WhatsApp. My number is 240-917-5732. Even though it's not a very professional thing to give your number, because then you get tons of email messages and it becomes overwhelming, but I'm growing. Hopefully in future.
What about your YouTube? Give us your YouTube.
So my YouTube, you can actually search my name, DrAdriel William, ADRIEL William, or Purpose Driven Dentistry.
Good. We got those in the description down below. And we have been given the game on how to get into a U.S. advanced standing program, an international dentist program. If you guys did not enjoy this episode, I encourage you to go back, listen, download the episode again, hit rewind, and listen.
And I have to tell them the answer.
Take some notes, because we just gave you guys some great game on how to navigate this process, gave some great tips. And Doc, what we get ready to say?
I was gonna remember that question where it was asked from that candidate, how many basketball can you fit in the room? And this is for candidates. If you get asked this kind of question at any platform, how many basketballs can you put in the room that you're sitting in? My answer to that candidate was, if I would say, well, in order to know that, I would like to know the length, breadth, and the height of the room, so I can calculate the volume of the room, and then I'll use the radius of one basketball to calculate the volume of the one basketball, and I can divide it to find how many basketballs I can fit in this room. But to give you approximate number, I would say 300. And if they don't agree, they can come and check.
Well, I can agree that this has been of value, and hope you guys feel the same. Put those comments down below. What did you like most about today's episode? What did you like most about today's episode? And this episode has been great. Guys, check out these other episodes right here. And hopefully they are helpful. Go to the next video right now. Go to the next video. There's some more gems, some more tips, some more strategies that are going to help you get to your end goal. Go to the next video. That's our time. Love, peace, and smiles. Go to the next video right now.